Robocop Rogue City was one heck of a surprise when it launched. It wasn't just a competent shooter wearing the Robocop skin, it was a legitimately great game that fully embraced the identity, tone, and grit of the classic films. You didn't just play as Robocop, you became Alex Murphy, delivering justice with a mechanical stomp and blowing scumbags to smithereens. Outside of a few hiccups, most notably sometimes a finicky save system that gave me some trouble on more than one occasion, I thought the original was a fantastic experience. It offered a satisfying mix of nostalgic fan service, robust combat, and a surprisingly well done story, with just enough exploration to break things up. Now the team at Teon, I think that's how I say it, is back with a new entry. Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business. It's a standalone expansion, or expandalone if you will, that acts as both a continuation of the base game and a more focused, bite-sized Robocop experience. This time around, a heavily armed group of mercenaries has taken over one of Detroit's massive mega buildings, and it's up to you to ascend the structure, floor by floor, to put a stop to these creeps before there's more trouble. At its core, Unfinished Business maintains everything that made the original game such a joy to play. You're essentially a walking tank, thundering through corridors with weighty footsteps and an arsenal that can turn criminals into red mist. The combat remains incredibly satisfying thanks to a blend of slow, deliberate movement and devastating firepower that turns every gunfight into a sheer power fantasy. If anything, the action has been cranked up a few notches. Where the original game has stretches of relative quiet, investigating crimes, questioning civilians, strolling through the streets of old Detroit, Unfinished Business hits the gas and rarely lets up. It's a more combat-heavy experience, and you'll notice this almost immediately. I could pick a random spot in my gameplay footage, and I'd bet good money there's a firefight going on in it. That's how dense the action is. That said, the structure has shifted noticeably. In the original Rogue City, gameplay was divided between open-ended hub areas and linear levels. You'd respond to minor crimes, collect evidence, or follow clues between mission objectives, which added a layer of immersion. Here, that has been streamlined. Unfinished Business is primarily a linear experience, guiding you through a sequence of tightly designed combat arenas with the occasional open section sprinkled in. Dread is legitimately the first thing that came to mind while progressing through this. Personally, I don't mind this change. While I appreciated the open areas in the base game, they could sometimes feel a bit meandering. In Unfinished Business, the pacing is much tighter and the level design is hyper-focused. That said, there are still a couple of open areas littered about, and when they do show up, they have the same issues where things feel more like filler. One area in particular drove me a bit mad, in fact, because it was so dark I had to rely on night vision nearly the entire time, and I'm not entirely sure if that was a deliberate design choice or a bug, but either way, stuff like that kind of hurts the overall flow of the game for me. Despite the increase in action, the game still does a commendable job of breaking things up. There are quieter moments scattered throughout the mega building, where you'll get a chance to interact with civilians, uncover side stories, and engage in situations where you have to defuse or handle things. You'll occasionally be asked to help residents with problems that range from petty thefts to hostage situations. These side missions inject some much needed variety and prevent the game from becoming a basically mindless corridor shooter. In fact, the pacing here is surprisingly well balanced. Just when I start to feel a little bit worn out by the gunfights, the game usually dials things back and gives me a moment to breathe. Whether it's a calm dialogue section, a low-stakes investigation, or just a bit of environmental storytelling, there's a clear effort here to keep the experience from becoming monotonous. That said, there are times where the slower segments do linger for a bit too long for my liking. Robocop is great at being an unstoppable force. When I spend too much time just running around and talking to NPCs, I do kind of miss the carnage. From a visual standpoint, Unfinished Business is absolutely top tier. The team has clearly taken everything they learned from the original Rogue City and refined it further. The lighting is moody and atmospheric, drenched in that familiar neon-drenched, smoke-filled aesthetic that perfectly channels the tone of the original films. Whether you're storming through a crumbling stairwell or trudging through some dimly lit corridors filled with flickering lights and debris, the attention to detail is insane. Gunfire lights up the room with satisfying bursts of muzzle flashes, particle effects. Enemies will ragdoll in appropriately over-the-top ways, sometimes way too over-the-top. Whoop! Look at that guy. And the environments feel tactile and destructible. The sound design enhances this tenfold. Every footstep is a thunderous clunk. Every bullet sounds like it could shatter concrete, and it is extremely satisfying. That said, there are still a few rough spots. Character animations during cutscenes can be a little stiff, especially facial animations. Lip syncing is also a bit hit or miss, and this can make a lot of the cutscenes feel just a little off. These issues were present in the original game as well, so it's not exactly unexpected. On the performance side, the game for me runs quite well. I've got a pretty powerful PC though, so keep that in mind. And I was able to maintain a rock solid 60 FPS throughout most of my playthrough, with everything cranked up to ultra settings. The game looks great and plays really smoothly. I was also pleasantly surprised how well it ran on the Steam Deck. Now let's be clear, you're not getting 60 FPS on Valve's handheld. You're looking at a performance window of around 25 to 40 FPS, depending on what is happening on screen. You'll need to set the graphics to their lowest presets to get their best results, and even then, some rough edges are to be expected. But overall, it's absolutely playable. Locking the frame rate to 30 provides a much smoother experience, and after a short adjustment period, I found myself more than happily playing through this on Valve's handheld. One recurring issue across both PC and Steam Deck, however, is traversal stutter. As you move throughout the world, you'll occasionally get small little performance hitches, little stutters that occur when new assets are loading in. This is a known quirk of Unreal Engine 5, and it's not unique to just this game. And while it can be slightly distracting, especially in larger areas, I don't find it game-breaking. Just a little bit annoying. Unfinished Business is, in a word, awesome. It takes everything that makes the original Rogue City great, the weighty combat, the brutal action, the unmistakable Robocop atmosphere, and condenses it into a leaner, more focused package. While it loses some of the exploration and investigative flair that gave the original game its texture, it more than makes up for it with relentless pacing, satisfying gunplay, and excellent level design. To use a well-worn but entirely accurate cliché, usually thrown about in reviews, this game makes you feel like Robocop. It's cathartic, it's brutal, it doesn't pull its punches, and it delivers exactly what fans want. Justice, delivered at the barrel of a gun. Whether you're unloading your weapon into a full room of mercs, scanning crime scenes for clues, or weighing whether to issue a ticket to or warn a petty criminal, every choice reinforces the feeling that you are Robocop. The sound design, impeccable. The visuals, gritty and gorgeous. The gameplay, satisfying, and a mix of strategic pacing and raw firepower. Sure, it's not perfect. The animation work still needs polish, and the linearity might disappoint those who wanted more of an extension to Rogue City's open areas. But in the end, it delivers where it matters most. If you've played the original Robocop Rogue City and enjoyed it, Unfinished Business is a no-brainer. It offers a refined, punchier version of everything you loved, while throwing in a few surprises to keep things fresh. And if you haven't played the original yet, you really should. Both titles are exceptional love letters to the Robocop universe, not just in tone and style, but in just how they frame the player's experience. You're not just blasting enemies, you're making judgment calls, navigating a decaying society, and trying to keep some form of order in a world where corporations and crime run unchecked. This is a series made by people who understand Robocop, the character, the world, the satire, the action, and they have done an excellent job of bringing it to life for modern audiences. Bottom line is, Robocop Rogue City Unfinished Business is a short but sweet expansion that hits hard, hits fast, and doesn't overstay its welcome. It's a worthy follow-up to one of the most unexpectedly excellent licensed games in recent years, and on top of that too, it isn't that expensive. It's a pretty cheap game.
Trouble, then.
They're pressing fire!